Good evening and welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 190, Gane versus Volkov, also known as UFC Vegas 30. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as usual, is Keith Schillen. Keith is the executive producer of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, as well as the Sherdog Radio Network, where he is the creator and host of numerous shows, including the Schillen and Duffy Show and MMA Legacy. Do I have the name of that second show correct? It's MMA Legacy, right?
Yeah. We just had our first episode with Jorge and Gracie. I haven't really promoted around because I was promoting around the Kayla Harrison one because her fighting this week. But yeah, if you love old school stories about the Gracie and stuff, make sure you check out that show.
And I have said this a couple of times on this show, but you may be hearing it from me for the first time. If you are a fan of old school MMA and you think you know everything about insert name of fighter or historical figure here, you owe it to yourself to listen to Keith's programs, because he has been able to pull information out of people like Jens Pulver and Sean Shirk that I thought I knew front and back, that surprised me as a long time fan of the sport. So highly recommended. Cool.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah. At any rate, let's talk about this card. I'm going to say something going in. I took a glance at this card, 3 weeks ago, like right after UFC 262, which I covered in person. I'm like, okay, let me kind of plot out my next month. What's coming down the pike? I looked at this card and I was like, this thing is awful. And even as I started doing research, watching footage, and kind of putting together my notes for this, I started off going, this card is awful. As I went along, it gets better and better on paper. The problem is that this card is super backloaded. Like the first 4 fights, I think there's like one fighter who's above 500 in the UFC. There could be a long cut list at the end of this one on our recap. But once you go further up the card, there are good fighters. There are fights that have divisional ranking implications. The headliner, I mean, we'll get to it later, but it's a likely title eliminator. There's every possibility that whoever wins that can probably sit and wait for a title shot once things shake out. Like the card gets better and better as we go along. Agree, disagree? Got any feelings on that?
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of things that I want to point out, it kind of just jumps out at me is, and this is an ongoing theme I say every single week, just the amount of international fighters, the amount of countries represented. I mean, we have every country, it seems like, on this card: Russia and Brazil, Canada, Sweden, and England.
But then like also ones like Lithuania and Bosnia that have like 1 or 2 fighters in the UFC, and they're represented too. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, there's ones that I didn't know which country it was, so I didn't want to say. Yeah, like Damir Hadzovic in Bosnia, and so that really jumps out to me. I don't think it'll shake up the rankings too much. Obviously, the main event. There's the very intriguing matchup between Barcelos and Timur Valiev. That's one I'm interested in the rankings. Moicano's still in there, Jay Herbert. Like, there's not too much on the ranking sense, but this is what I want to say. We have 13 fights. What's the easy fight to pick?
Avila versus Stoliarenko. That's about dude, if you're calling an upset special on that and it plays, I will send you a bottle of whiskey.
But Ben, you have a short memory, my man. They were already supposed to fight each other. Yeah, remember?
They sure were.
Do you remember my prediction?
Did you?
Oh, well, we don't want to give away our excitement, but.
Oh, well. All right. So buckle up, because it sounds like Keith's got some upset picks. So do I. It's gonna be a fun night of fights. Or fun night of picks, anyway. I don't know how fun the recap is going to be. We'll see. You ready to dig into this one?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right, let's kick it right off. We fired off with Yancy Medeiros versus Damir Hadzovic in a lightweight matchup. I had to check that because Medeiros has, of course, bounced back and forth between weight classes. It is taking place at 155 pounds. Medeiros, the 33-year-old Hawaiian, is 15-7 with 1 no contest overall. He is 6-7 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He comes into this fight on a 3-fight losing streak, although in fairness to him, those losses have been to the 2018 version of Donald Cerrone at welterweight, which was kind of Donald Cerrone's last gasp as a contender level fighter, Gregor Gillespie, and most recently Lando Venata last February. So he's coming back for the first time in almost a year and a half. He is on a 3-fight losing streak, and he'll be taking on Hadzovic. As mentioned, the guy who goes by the Bosnian Bomber, one of there may be 2 Bosnians in the UFC right now, or he may be the only one, but he was the first. He is 13-6 overall. He is 3-4 in the UFC. He is on a 2-fight losing streak, having dropped fights to Christos Giagos back in June of 2019, and then most recently, last March, lost to Renato Moicano, who fights later on this card by rear naked choke in just 44 seconds. Odds on this one fairly close, but Hadzovic is the slight favorite. He's minus 140. You can get Medeiros at plus 120 or so. Something that is going to crop up as a narrative a couple times on this card. There are some fighters on this card that for the longest time, they were the, win 2, lose 1, win 2, lose 1 type of fighters that just seemed like they were going to hang out on the roster forever because they're entertaining, they're a familiar name, familiar face. But, somewhere along the line, they started losing 2 and winning 1, and all of a sudden their back is against the wall. Yancy Medeiros is one of those. Ovent St. Preux, whom we'll get to later, is getting into the same territory. The question for me with Medeiros is, he keeps getting older. He's a guy that has wanted to fight at welterweight numerous times. Going back to your lighter weight after a long layoff into your 30s, it leaves me worried about him. But even before then, he just hasn't looked good in his last couple of fights. Cerrone and Gillespie both, blew him out, but they're just better fighters than he is. Lando Venata last year, that's exactly the kind of fight that Yancy Medeiros used to be able to pull out. Medeiros is a little inconsistent. Venata's incredibly inconsistent, has questionable fight IQ. So he's just supposed to be a lesser version of Medeiros, and instead he was a greater version of Medeiros. That's what worries me about him. Hadzovic, plenty of question marks about him as well, obviously. He's coming off of 2 losses, again, to 2 very good fighters in Christos Giagos and Renato Moicano, but I think he's probably closer to his prime self, and even though he's 34, he's actually older than Medeiros. I feel as though he's in his prime and maybe even still getting a little bit better, between fights in a way that Medeiros is definitely not. So I'm leaning towards Hadzovic just as the more known quantity here. He can also, he's able to lean on his wrestling. It's not great, but it's good enough against poor defensive wrestlers. Medeiros still falls into that category. So, give me Hadzovic in a fun fight, but in a fight that's quite possibly a pink slip derby, he's not going to make it as fun as we might want because he just needs to win this damn thing and not lose his job. I predict that he's going to turn to his wrestling, and probably at least the second and third round, he's going to be the fresher guy. He's going to be getting the takedowns, and it's going to be a tough discussion about Yancy Medeiros Saturday night.
Yeah, this is like I said in the top, it's a hard fight to pick. Yancy Medeiros is one of the weirdest fighters in the UFC, and is that he had this little minor push by the UFC, but it was like a mediocre fighter. I never understood the push. I never saw the talent. He was never on this great run, but suddenly he was getting matched up with Dustin Poirier, and you mentioned Donald Cerrone, Gregor Gillespie. He was always in some pretty marquee fights, and I don't really think he earned it. I know he had good.
Pardon me for interjecting. The Cerrone fight was a headliner.
Headliner, yeah.
In 3 fights, he's gone from headliner to curtain jerker.
Yeah, they had this weird thing about him and Cerrone being friendly and I don't know, kissing people's grandmas and stuff, and I don't know. So Medeiros, like I said, he's always a mid to low level UFC fighter, in my opinion. He is a big lightweight, as you mentioned. He's fought at welterweight. He's long and lengthy. I promise I stopped talking about people who switch stances because everyone does it. But he's one of the guys I have to point out because he's constantly switching stances. He's kind of slow. He loses a little power because he throws some arm punches, some holds defensively, particularly keeping his chin high in the air. He's a bit of a headhunter. We've talked about this in the past with his boxing. He looks to go to the head a lot with his boxing. Does focus on the body with his kicks. I actually think his body kicks probably is his best weapon. He has been gun shy at times, where he hasn't thrown out enough, which is so crazy to think about a guy who's the main training partner of Max Holloway, who is known for his insane. I mean, look at the Calvin Cato fight, the insane output he can do. He'll throw single shots. He will wrestle. But I wouldn't call him a wrestler. And as you pointed out, I would say he's probably a weak defense wrestler. I'm not as far down on his wrestling as seems like you be, but I agree. I would put him in the weaker category. Move over to Hadzovic. One thing when I was watching film on Hadzovic is the commentary team always talks about how strong he is. I don't see anything particular which says, "Oh, he looks really strong," but it's something they always comment on. So I don't know if that's just a rumor. People who've trained with him, rolled with him, might say it, and it kind of gets passed to the commentary team. But they always talk about how strong he is. So I'm assuming that's true. So he constantly moves it forward. He has good output. He throws strikes right down the middle. I love his step in knees. Defensively, he fights by the high guard defense, but he backs straight up on the center line. And a lot of guys had success. His last fight, Christos Giagos, had a lot of success because Hadzovic was always kind of dead right in front of him. He will sneak in a takedown, but I actually think he's also a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, Giagos took him down very easily. He did get back up. To his credit, he got back up in that fight. But the fight before that, Renato Moicano, he didn't get back up because Moicano took him down and submitted him extremely fast. So as far as prediction goes, right out the gate, this is a hard fight. And it's a hard fight to pick simply because I don't have any trust in either one of these guys. When you have two lower-level UFC, two guys, as you mentioned, fighting for the job, possible pink slip, probably being on our cut list, a loser, it's hard to have faith in them. One guy I said can be gun-shy, and the other guy has good output, and that alone is breaking it for me because I know that Hadzovic could at least put himself in position with his output. Like, I don't know if he's got the skills to hang, but if it's a close fight, he's going to have the overall strikes thrown in his favor, most likely. So with that, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to take the slate favorite and Damir Hadzovic to end his losing streak. I'll take it by decision.
There you go. 2 picks for Damir Hadzovic in your opener at UFC Fight Night 190. Next up at UFC Vegas 30, it is a featherweight matchup between Charles Rosa and Justin Jaynes. Rosa, the 34-year-old native of Peabody, Massachusetts, is 13-5 overall. He is 4-5 in the UFC, having alternated wins and losses since his debut all the way back in 2014. He fought most recently last February, dropping a unanimous decision to Derek Minner at UFC Fight Night Blades versus Lewis. He takes on Jaynes, the 31-year-old Michigan native by way of Las Vegas, is 16-7 overall. He is 1-3 in the UFC after making a spectacular debut, knocking out Frank Camacho in 40 seconds at UFC on ESPN Blades versus Volkov last June. He proceeded to lose 3 fights between then and the end of the year to Gavin Tucker, Gabriel Benitez, and most recently this February, Devontae Smith, who beat and bloodied him up into a doctor stoppage in the second round. Odds on this one do favor Rosa. He is minus 170. You can get Jaynes at plus 150 as the moderate underdog. Keith, it's 2 more fighters who were below 500 in the UFC, and at least in the case of Jaynes, are almost certainly fighting for their continued employment. Considering that Rosa is about as homegrown a product of CES as you can get, I'm definitely going to throw this one to you first. Who you got and how?
Yeah, you got Charles Rosa, the Boston Strong guy, who's got the Boston Strong nickname, but hasn't lived in New England in like 10 years. I lived in upstate New York for like 6 months, and I should call myself like the Ithaca man or something. I lived in the same hometown where Kyle Dake, who's wrestling in the Olympics. He the same small little rinky dink no name town of Lansing, New York. So shout out to Lansing, New York. I lived there for a little while, and hopefully we get a gold medalist, as I think that's gonna happen. Anyways, back on track. Charles Rosa versus Justin Jaynes, another hard fight to pick. Rosa, I always like to take a jab at Rosa. He's actually a fantastic dude. I just joke about him training down in Florida. He's constantly back up in New England. He's got the connection with the Lausanne gym, and he's playing. He's a great dude. Anyways, if you can't bust a guy from Boston's balls, who can you? Rosa, he's got this karate style to him where he also switches stances a lot, like sideways stances. He's pretty elusive. He's got good movement, a lot of different attacks, a lot of variety. I would say his boxing's a little limited though. He's not going to win a boxing match. His hands are kind of slow. He throws single strikes with his hands. He's open to counters. We've mentioned this in the past because he likes to see what he's landing. He admires his work a little bit. And he's taken a lot of damage recently. I think about the Bosniak fight. He got landed a lot of shots at. The Shane Burgos. Burgos was walking through landing power shots. The last two fights, Bryce Mitchell and Derek Minner both put a beating on him. And he also leaves his hands very low, so he's going to take some shots. But he's got a lot of kicks. He keeps the kicks from distance. He just stays busy with the kicks. Like he's got a very good output for someone who throws kicks. Like you're not really, most people aren't known for kicks, but you have to get through that if you want to get on him. You want to turn it into a grappling match. You want to turn it into a boxing match. You got to get through his kicks, and that's a very difficult thing to do. He will shoot for a takedown, though. As I mentioned in the last fight, he's not a powerful wrestler. I would actually say he's a weak defense wrestler. He's Brazilian just to black belt, but there's levels to black belts. I mean, we saw that in his last two fights. Bryce Mitchell and Derek Minner were on much different levels of their grappling. He has got submissions off his back. I go back to the another fellow New Englander in Boston when he caught Manny Bermudez with a submission, and that was a time when Manny Bermudez was really known for his grappling, and he likes leg locks. He'll go for leg locks. I think that's a negative thing. It's nice to have as a Hail Mary, but he looks at it as an offensive tool, and I've never thought of leg locks. I think it actually puts you in bad positions, keeps you on the ground when you should be working up. Move over to Justin Jaynes, a guy that's in the UFC that is just a nice story for him to be in. He's not a great athlete. He wasn't this guy whose name was jumping off the charts in the regional scene. Just a lunch pail kind of guy that would hang out with Alexei Oleinik. Just one of those guys. I just feel like without knowing anything about Justin Jaynes, I just think he's good at fixing cars and if him and Charles Rosa drank a beer, Justin Jaynes can chug a beer better than Charles Rosa. Justin Jaynes can drink a beer. Anyways, on the feet, he's very aggressive, got a very brawling style, good power, mostly just a boxer, not much kicks and knees, elbows. So if he stays on the outside, that's gonna be a big problem for him. But he does well to slide in the pocket. He understands where he needs to be, and when he slides in the pocket, he unloads big shots. A lot of the shots are looping punches. He loads up. I think he kind of telegraphs it. And he does get tired because all he does is throw power. And he has he makes some technical mistakes where, for example, we talked about last time, he'll throw a lead uppercut, which if it lands, it's nice. Everyone thinks about Junior Dos Santos landing this huge uppercut from, South America coming up. But it also, don't forget when Chuck Liddell tried the same thing as Rashad Evans. It's a very dangerous thing. It's if you land it, it's good. If it's not, it's bad. But if he gets in the pocket, he's got some power. He's got some speed. He can crack. He doesn't block very well. His body is open, his leg kicks. But Gabriel Benitez tore up his legs with kicks. He has a wrestling background, though we don't see it oftenly, especially offensively. He does defend takedowns looking for a guillotine. He's aggressive with his takedown defense. He's trying to make you lose. But his sub-defense is kind of bad. I mean, he was submitted by Gavin Tucker not that short time ago. So this is a really tough pick. I'm on the fence. Again, as I said last time, I don't have a lot of confidence. Charles Rosa has beaten the better competition, I think, of these two. But Charles Rosa has a lot of wear and tear on him. I've seen his chin get cracked. And Justin Jaynes is going to get in that pocket, and he's going to throw some big shots. And I think if he can get past those kicks, I think he can land some hard shots. I don't know if he's going to put out Charles Rosa. Charles Rosa is tough as nails. But I'm gonna go with an upset. Like, it's my first upset pick, and I'm gonna take Justin Jaynes to land enough shots. I think he might fade late, where Rosa will kind of come on strongly, but I think it might be a little too late. And I think not only does Jaynes win, but I think this might be the last time we see Rosa in the UFC.
Well, all right. Upset picks, just coming right out of Keith Chillen tonight. I absolutely get where you're coming from there. Jaynes is a scary guy in the pocket in boxing range when he can wing his just big shots. Some of his like ill-advised like lead uppercuts. The problem is like his boxing range. He's a short, kind of broad, squatty guy with short arms. I mean, he kind of reminds me of to make a Boston reference, Alex Karalexis. That sort of like little squatty T-Rex man build.
That's going back, man. How many people think had to like pause this show and look up Alex Karalexis? I love it. Continue. Sorry.
You better pause and Google the original Von Fluchoke because the victim was Alex Karalexis.
There you go. There you go.
To me, it's pretty much a question of, can Jaynes get into that range consistently against Rosa? Rosa, you made it. You said he uses plenty of kicks on the feet. He likes to stay at distance. He likes to be on his bike a little bit, use kicks that just kind of frustrate you. He throws a good volume of kicks. Most of them are not wind up, full crow cop type kicks. I'm hitting you here, hitting you there. Just my thought is that I don't think his footwork is great, but it might be a little better than Jaynes. I picture Jaynes as coming kind of charging at him, and Rosa being able to, kick, slide out of range, and kind of stay clear of danger enough to win a decision. That's it. I mean, the other outcome is the one you're calling for, where Jaynes succeeds in getting inside and either puts him away or hurts him bad enough to put away rounds. I could see either happening. I am going to go with Rosa here. But if you're right, if Jaynes beats Rosa, certainly if he beats Rosa badly, I agree with you. It might be the last we see of Rosa. And the reverse is almost certainly true. I mean, I was surprised when he got a fourth chance in a row. So we will see what happens on Saturday. Next up on the UFC Fight Night 190 undercard, we head to the bantamweight division for the long-awaited and briefly postponed Battle of the Julias. It is Julia Avila versus Julia Stoliarenko. Avila, the 33-year-old Californian, is 8-2 overall. She is 2-1 since joining the UFC back in 2019. Most recently, she dropped a unanimous decision to Sijara Eubanks at UFC Fight Night Waterson versus Hill last September. That put an end to the two-fight winning streak with which she had joined the promotion, those being a unanimous decision over Pani Kianzad back in July of 2019, and a quick and brutal TKO of Gina Mazzani last June at UFC on ESPN 10. She'll be taking on Stoliarenko. The 28-year-old Lithuanian is 9-4-2 overall. She is 0-1 in the UFC, dropping her debut last August to Yana Kunitskaya by unanimous decision. Avila is, as of the time of this preview, the longest favorite on the card by a pretty decent margin. She's out there minus 350 or so. You can get Stoliarenko at plus 290. The sports books that are making these odds, or the bettors who are driving the odds into this direction, appear to feel the same way I do. That Avila's fight against Eubanks was an aberration rather than the norm, because the Avila that made her way up to that fight, before the Eubanks fight, punts Julia Stoliarenko. I mean, Avila, she came out of Invicta. She looked great in Invicta. I mean, before the Eubanks fight, her only loss was, this 45-second freak finger injury where her finger got put on sideways. I mean, and you could argue that at least outside of her first fight or two, she hadn't really even run up against much adversity. And that included beating, Nico Montano right before Montano went and won TUF 26. Then she gets into the UFC, handles Pani Kianzad, a former featherweight who just won, last week and looked good. She knocked Gina Mazzani all the way down to flyweight, and then just kind of hit a wall against Eubanks. To me, the question is, what got Avila to the dance is her physicality. She's not super tall and she's not super broad, but she's strong, she's athletic, and she's hyper aggressive. She's not exactly the same, but it kind of reminds me of early Diego Sanchez in the UFC, where he's a good enough striker, very good wrestler, good grappler, brutal ground and pounder. But what drives it all is that they're just, she's just like a Tasmanian devil, just very aggressive and generally stronger and more athletic than her opponents. All of that went away instantly against Eubanks. I mean, there were 3 stories in that fight of 3 rounds. First round, Eubanks slammed her all over the place. That was an eye-opener because that's what Avila usually does to other people. Second round, Avila got taken down. She's, throwing up some pretty good submissions. And Eubanks is just countering these submissions by just ripping her arm out, just like brute forcing her way out of submissions. By the third round, Avila's still trying submissions because she's still getting taken down. And Eubanks is basically just ignoring them and countering an armbar by like hitting her in the face with the other arm. It was disrespect. The bully got bullied. It means one of 2 things. Either that was just a bad night at the office for Avila or just a bad matchup, or we have seen a ceiling for Julia Avila against fighters that she cannot overwhelm with physicality. I think that's what we're going to start finding out this Saturday. I'm choosing to believe that it's the latter, or that's the former case. Just bad night at the office, bad matchup. In Stoliarenko, we have someone that she's not a great athlete, at least by UFC bantamweight standards, and she is about as one-dimensional a fighter as you will find at this level, like in like a major promotion. She's almost a throwback that way, where it's like armbar or bust. I'm picking Julia Avila I think she's going to get the better of things on the feet, and I think she's going to be able to take Stoliarenko down. I don't think she's going to get armbarred. I think she's just going to beat her up on the ground. Give me Julia Avila by second round TKO on the ground.
All right. So I get the same notes I had when we broke this down last time. I didn't change it. I didn't do more film study. So I will read everything I said last time, just in case someone didn't watch it last time. Avila, she's a big bantamweight. She, as you mentioned, her physique. She's more of a brute than she is an athlete. I like a Diego Sanchez, as he was never like the most technical guy. Just kind of overwhelmed you. She's got high volume striker, good jab on the feet. Man, she's a good striker. She throws combos. She just walks through punches. She hits very hard. She does keep her chin high in the air, which is an issue, but no one's hurt her enough where it's been an issue. She throws a nice high kick, mean inside, step in knees, step in elbows. She can wrestle a little bit, clinch takedowns, but she's a weak wrestler herself. Taken down by Eubanks, really struggled to get up from on bottom. She was attacking with subs off her back. She did almost triangle Eubanks twice, but I don't think she's a submission threat. She has 1 submission win on her record. And to me, you talked about Stoliarenko being one-dimensional, and I 100% agree. Well, I don't know if I 100% agree, but I understand where where you're coming from. Like, if she wins, it's going to be on the ground. I feel the same way with Avila. If she wins, it's going to be on the feet. Like, she's not going to out-grapple Stoliarenko. Now, Stoliarenko, she's a large bantamweight, especially when she doesn't make weight, especially when she almost passes out, as we sort of let. Not almost passed. She did pass out.
Yeah.
It was one of the scariest things I've seen. But I try to stay away from everything else other than the X's and O's, because we've seen it where suddenly we pick against a fighter because of a weight thing, and then the next time they weigh in, Yoel Romero, Davison Figueiredo, insert whoever, they make weight fine and they look great. So what do I think of her as a fighter? She's very aggressive on the feet. I'll give her that. She's a bit flat-footed. That goes back to the athleticism you're talking about. She's not a great athlete. She drops her hands. Very unorthodox with her striking, kind of herky-jerky Keith Jardine style. But she throws hard. It's wild. She's very hittable. She kind of runs into punches. But she can hurt you. Throws tons of high kicks. She just throws a lot of high kicks. She don't really land them, but she throws them. I love that she tries to close the distance with a Superman punch. It's something when I first started training in MMA, it was something I like to do as a wrestler. I didn't, you don't want to get punched in the face, so throw a Superman punch to close the distance. But in the clinch, she's not a bad clinch striker. She likes elbows inside there. Her fight against Lisa Rosa is one of the most bloodiest fights in history. Though the clinch is what I used to be the strength based on her judo background. She got beat up in the clinch bad by Yana Kunitskaya, so maybe it's not as strong of an area that I thought it would be. She will jump guard, which is not a good thing against many people, but maybe in this case, I don't hate it. She'll try an Imanabari roll to get the fight to the ground. But as you mentioned, she is a kind of knockoff Ronda Rousey, where she is an armbar specialist. But she's shown that she has cardio. Like, to go 25 minutes. She's won 25 minutes in Invicta. This is a tough fight to call. Avila's really good on the feet, but she showed some holes. Stoliarenko is tough on the feet because of her power and aggression, but she isn't very technical. If she gets the fight to the ground, she can end it. I thought it was a little bit of an omen when I was breaking that down. Like, I picked Stoliarenko in one of the biggest upsets I've ever picked. And I thought it was an element like, hey, idiot, you're going to look really bad because this is going to go one of two ways. Either Stoliarenko's going to submit her, or she's going to be a punching bag that it is like 10-8 rounds. It's real bad. So which side am I going to go with? And I really was looking at like an omen, like I was saying, hey, idiot, like change your pick. And I changed my pick. And then I go, Keith, you're not a bitch. You made a pick upset. I mean, make it like fake it. Like how at the beginning of the video, I forgot to put my green screen on, and all I saw was a green back in instead of seeing the New York's beautiful skyline. Now I'm back rich again, man. I bet on Stoliarenko, so now I got the beautiful apartment. So I'm calling this my upset special. I'm gonna say she gets to the ground and she lands that armbar. So I think she's like a plus 400 underdog, and I'm saying she hits. Give me Stoliarenko by first. No, not first round. I'll go third round submission by an armbar.
I don't know what they drink to celebrate in Lithuania, but I'll find out and send you a bottle if this one pays.
There you have it. That's my second upset pick. I got more.
Two upsets in the first three fights. One of them for the biggest underdog on the card. You can never say that this man lacks the guts or the courage of his convictions. We now head to the light heavyweight division for a matchup between Marcin Prachnio and Ike Villanueva. Prachnio, the 32-year-old Pole, is 14-5 overall. He is 1-3 in the UFC, and he is the reverse of Justin Jaynes. He lost his first three, got a fourth chance, and won. I believe he may even have been released and quickly re-signed or been left in limbo or something like that. But he came back and fought Khalil Roundtree in January, took a unanimous decision over him, and here he's back with a chance to make the most of this UFC run. He will be taking on Villanueva, another COVID-era opportunist. The 37-year-old Houstonian is 18-11 overall. He is 1-2 in the UFC. He dropped his first two fights in the UFC, first at heavyweight on ultra short notice to Chase Sherman. He got knocked out early in the second round there, then got bludgeoned and bloodied into a doctor stoppage in about 90 seconds by Jordan Wright last August. Came back in January and knocked out Vinicius Moreira with pretty brutal knockout early in the second round of their matchup at UFC on ESPN, Chiesa versus Magny. Prachnio, pretty comfortable favorite here. He is minus 210. You can get Hurricane Ike at plus 175 if you fancy. Keith, who do you have in this one, and how do you think the fight plays out?
Ben, this is your Houston own, right?
Houston's own.
Oh, I got to give you the honors, my man. You got to go first. This is your boy.
I'll jump right in. Ike Villanueva, 37 years old. I mean, he is what he is. And I'm not saying that he is not making incremental progress as a fighter, but he is what he is. He is doing the things that brought him to the dance. I mean, the thing about him was he came into the UFC. Yes, it was on short notice, but it was also on the back of just completely brutalizing two UFC veterans in Roger Narvaez and Rashad Coulter. He's a boxer by preference. He will throw kicks, but boxer by preference. He has pretty fast hands on the I mean, on the regional scene, he has crushing power. I think he has above average power by the standards of a UFC light heavyweight in his hands. His footwork is slow. I mean, he's slow of foot. He's plodding. I mean, even if he were a plus athlete, it's the rampage style of thing where he's kind of shuffling around like a boxer, but he's not super light on his feet. Not great at checking kicks. He's a bully in the clinch at the local level, at the UFC level. Jordan Wright, a middleweight by preference, just completely mauled him in the clinch. That was a cut stoppage, but he got cut by Wright kneeing him in the face a million times. His way to victory over Prachnio is to charge at him and wing some hooks at him. That's what he does. If that's going to work against anyone in the UFC light heavyweight division, it's Marcin Prachnio. Prachnio's, I mean, his first 3 losses in the UFC were all KOs. And I mean, one of them was completely conducted on the feet. All of them, the mauling started on the feet. But, much as I love Ike, much as I think he's a fantastic story, I do see Prachnio, and I'm not even going to say Prachnio like hangs on for that he like hangs on for a decision victory. I think he's probably going to catch Ike charging in. Ike knows what distance he needs to be at to win this fight. Prachnio would prefer to fight slightly more of an outfight. He has more weapons in the arsenal. If he gets throwing kicks, Ike doesn't check him. It'll make me sad. I'll buy him a beer the next time I see him, around town. But give me Marcin Prachnio by third round TKO just from an accumulation of damage. Ike's going to give it his best shot and go out on the shield.
There you go. You can't call Ben a homer at all. I'm intrigued by this fight in a sense. Like, it's going to be fun. Like, Ike Villanueva doesn't fight boring fights. He's got like you mentioned, he's got to charge forward and it's going to be fun. Prachnio, karate style, but he's not the athlete that most of the karate guys are. Even like Charles Rosa, we already talked about, he's a much better athlete. Now, obviously, I'm comparing a lower weight class guy to a higher weight class guy, so I understand like, little apples and oranges. But I mean, in their respective weight classes, like Prachnio is not really a great athlete, which is funny. He's kind of slow. His boxing is pretty ugly, though it did look like he looked much better in his last fight. But usually he just kind of swings. And sometimes he doesn't have that big of an output. I do like his leg kicks, though, coming from the karate style. But he drops his hands when throwing them, and he's going to get knocked out for that. I mean, he's had a lot of problems with his chin already. He's been knocked out 3 out of the last 5 fights he's been knocked out. He likes to clinch a lot, which might be an area where he found success, like you mentioned, where Villanova got beat up by Jordan Wright in the clinch. You mentioned Villanova's age, 37. It's light heavyweight, so I'm not too concerned about his age, but not a great, a minus athlete, not a plus athlete, a minus athlete. But he's a striker. He attacks, as you mentioned, he attacks in spurts, throws combos, his left hook being like his big money punch. He does have power, as you mentioned, 14 KOs, including a KO in his last fight. He has some huge defensive holes. Lacks head movement, back straight up, had no answer for leg kicks, as you mentioned. Chase Sherman had a field day with leg kicks against him. Chin, it's not the issue that Prachnio is, but it's concerning. He's got 5 KO losses. I mean, some of it's a little deceiving, like the Jordan Wright was a cut and stuff, but if you rewatch that fight, it looked like he was on his way to get knocked out if they continued. Bad grappler, no wrestling at all, no offensive wrestling at all. He doesn't have a single submission win in his long career, which is surprising. You don't just like fall into a submission. So Prachnio is a much more technical. Like I shouldn't say that after I kind of just dogged on his striking, but he's definitely I think he's more technical sound. He has the higher ceiling. That said, he has chin issues, and Ike Villanueva can crack. And I know you live in Texas. But, dude, don't forget that I just visited Texas. I'm going to do my best, Lee Corso. Stand up, Texas. Your boy Ben didn't back you up. I'm calling the huge upset. I say Ike goes on a winning streak. I'm going to say he wins by first-round knockout. Let's go. Hee-hee-ha. Let's go. Ike is going away by first-round knockout.
The only way that could be better is if that was a Buc-ee's hat. There you go. Keith Schillen putting me to shame. They're not even. They're going to kick me out of Texas.
I should have had my Bucky's t-shirt. next show, I'll put the Bucky's t-shirt on.
Next up is a welterweight matchup between Warlley Alves and Jeremiah Wells. Alves, the 30-year-old Brazilian, is 14-4 overall. He is 8-4 since joining the UFC as the winner of the third season of The Ultimate Fighter Brazil. He fought most recently in January, taking about half a round to knock out Munir Lazzez, kind of putting a quick end to what seemed to be one of the more promising breakout stars to come out of 2020. He will be welcoming Wells to the UFC. The 34-year-old Philadelphia native is 8-2-1 overall. As mentioned, this is his UFC debut. He is a veteran of both CFFC and New England Zone CES. Alves, strong favorite here, as you might expect. He is minus 205. You can get Wells around plus 165 or 170 as the underdog. Keith, remember when Warlley Alves looked like a, future title contender and, looked like a guy that was going to be, he was going to be here to stay and he was going to be a serious factor in the division. I can't believe he's still only 30 years old. When I looked, I expected him to be like 35 because it feels like he's been in the UFC so long. And I feel like some of the bloom is off the rose, and I'm not sure exactly why, because it's not like he's lost to bad people. So talk me off the cliff. How does this fight go? Does Warlley Alves remind us just how much promise he had, 5 years ago?
Yeah, well, it's funny you mentioned that. We did talk about Warlley Alves' age last fight. They're like, wow, he's way younger than we expect him to be. He's weird. Like, 1 minute fight, he looks terrible. The other fight, he looks fantastic. And last fight, I thought he looked fantastic. He had good movement. He's pretty elusive. I would never say he has fast hands, but he cracks. Like, he lands hard shots. I love that he goes to the body, got good leg kicks. I think of the Lazzez fight, he really was kicking out the legs. Sergio Moraes fight was another fight that he really targeted the legs. He can grab the clinch and just grind in there. That's a position where if he's getting tired, he can just kind of lean on you. His grappling is good. He's a BJJ black belt. He's got some slick back takes. If he ends up on top, hard ground and pound. Though he is a legit grappler, though, like I just talked up his grappling, he was subbed by Randy Brown in a fight that was like really smart. That's like the low point. Like, it's like he's like a roller coaster. You never know what you kind of get with him. He's shown signs where he goes hard for 50 minutes, but he also showed signs of wearing down. James Krause fight was a fight that he was really gassed out by the second round. Moving to Jeremiah Wells. Jeremiah Wells is a guy that I've been calling to be in the UFC for a long time. I wrote out when I used to write for a different media outlet. I wrote, I don't know why the editor made me pick 8 fighters, but it was 8 fighters the UFC used to sign. Kind of weird, but I picked 7 of the fighters. The editor picked 1 and made me write this person. You guys can figure out which one that one is. But anyways, I'll move on. I'll move on before I get myself in trouble. Well, I like Wells. He's well-rounded. He's short. He's a short welterweight, only 5'9", but he's got a long reach. He's got 75-inch reach. He fights out of both stance. He charges forward and throws hard shots. So he has a very Yoel Romero sit back, and then explode style. He loves spinning attacks. He loves flying knees, and he just has raw, God-gifted power. Like, he touches you, he breaks your face. He broke Gary Boletto Jr., who's a nice prospect out of New England, a Rhode Islander. He broke his jaw with 1 punch. It put him out. Gary Boletto had to have multiple surgeries. Like, Jeremiah Wells touches you. Like, he can put you out. He throws everything hard. He's a solid offensive wrestler, solid defensive wrestler. He's taking this fight on short notice. He trains on a really good team, a team that I think has been on a rise for a long time in Renzo Gracie Fili. That's Sean Brady's team. Yeah. I believe Daniel Gracie's the one it's Daniel Gracie's the one who runs that team. There's other guys. I know Paul Felder trains out of there occasionally, and I don't know. There's a couple other prospects off my head, but it's a really good rising team. This is a tough test. Warlley Alves is a tough test in your UFC debut. If Wells had problems with leg kicks against Vinicius de Jesus, the one that lost him the title in CS. In the same fight, there was a very low output. So I'm worried about a little low output sometimes out of Wells. I'm worried about not checking leg kicks. I'm worried about the UFC jitters, short notice. There's a lot of things. High praise on this guy. This guy that I've been pumping up. I know a bunch of other people have really been pumping up this guy. I think he's a good addition. I think he's not going to be a 500 fighter in the UFC. I think he's going to be better than that. Similar to like a Warlley Alves. I don't think he's going to be a top 15 guy, but I think he'll be, hovering in the top 30-ish. But this is a step up in competition. And good Warlley Alves is a really scary dude. And I think good Warlley Alves shows up. I think he kicks out the legs, and I think he wins a unanimous decision. So give me Warlley Alves by decision.
Outstanding. I'm glad that you are kind of as high on Wells as I am, because I remember thinking of him as a really promising prospect, probably 3 or 4 years ago, and then he disappeared for basically all of last year, and I kind of fell off my radar. I'm glad to see him in there. My concern, same as you, is the shortness of the notice. He's not tall, but he is a burly guy. My question is, is he having to make a radical cut to make 170 in time for this? But it's so hard to bet on Warlley Alves, because you pointed out he's one of the most Jekyll and Hyde fighters in the UFC right now, of a guy that is, so high level, of a guy who, effortlessly guillotined Colby Covington, in one of his first fights in the UFC, of a guy that just destroyed Sergio Moraes, of a guy that stopped the Munir Lazzez hype train. My thought is that Wells comes out, and kind of with that reckless abandon of the short notice guy who knows, I cut 25 pounds this week, I have 4 minutes to finish this thing, comes out guns blazing. That's still a way to put Warlley Alves out of his game. He handled Lazzez, and I'm not going to claim I picked that. I thought Lazzez was going to style all over Alves, but Munir Lazzez is a fantastic striker who really wants to, fight patiently, snipe from distance. Alves is built to handle that. He can handle something that's not just getting him out of his comfort zone, quite that way. I think Wells comes out and just makes a huge splash here by knocking out the tough 3 winner. Give me Jeremiah Wells by first round knockout. I'm not going to call this my upset special, because I know it's a bit of a flyer, but as I watch these guys' fights, I see it happening in my head, and I'm kicking myself if I don't pick it, and then it happens. So give me Jeremiah Wells by first round knockout.
Wow, man, how many fights in a row have we disagreed on?
I believe that is 4 in a row.
Wow, and you went the upset. I think I got 3 upset picks already, but you got another upset pick.
I've got another upset here. That's the thing. We're differing on some people that are, some pretty long odds. So
this is what I like about this card. They're hard fights to pick.
Yep, hard fights to pick. Even the ones where someone's a 2-1 favorite. Well, that's what makes this fun. We stay in the welterweight division for a matchup between Kazakhstan prospect Shavkat Rakhmonov and the still here Michel Prazeres. Rakhmonov, the 26-year-old, is 13-0 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC, having made his debut last October at UFC 254 and run right over Alex Cowboy Oliveira, choking him out with the guillotine in the closing moments of the first round. He'll be taking on Prazeres. The 39-year-old Brazilian is 26-3 overall. He is 10-3 in the UFC. He fought most recently all the way back in February of 2019, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Ismail Nardiev at UFC Fight Night Blachowicz versus Santos. That snapped an 8-fight winning streak for this man across 2 divisions, as he has fought at lightweight as well as welterweight. But the combination of the loss and the long layoff perhaps promise that people see in Rakhmonov make Prazeres one of the bigger underdogs on the card. Rakhmonov is minus 275. Prazeres are out there around plus 230 or plus 235. As we were preparing to talk about this one and we were, off air, you mentioned that you kind of forgot that Michel Prazeres was a thing. I'm the same way. And it is because he is a forgettable dude. I don't know of any nice way to say this, and I'm not saying anything about him as a person, but as a fighter, he's a forgettable dude. How many guys get to 10-3 in the 2 toughest divisions in the UFC, rack up an 8-fight winning streak in 2 of the best divisions in the UFC, beat some good fighters? I mean, he's beaten Gilbert Burns, beat Mairbek Taisimov. He has, and then just you forget all about him. There are a couple reasons for it. One, his personality is wallpaper paste, his fights are wallpaper paste. There's a reason the UFC buries this dude on the prelims. It's just not fun to watch him fight. He's like a little Brazilian Sean Shirk or something. Just, what you're going to get out of him. He might choke somebody it's kind of like not really Shirk. It's like a really squat John Fitch. He's going to take you down. He's going to grind you out. If you're bad enough on the ground, he will choke you. If you give him your neck or you get so tired, he will choke you. But otherwise, he's just perfectly happy to take the 30-27. That's Michel Prazeres' game. I'm surprised he's 39 because he's the opposite of the opposite of Warlley Alves. Where I just figured Michel Prazeres would be kind of like 34 for 10 years and just be in the UFC kind of filling up undercards. I sound like I'm really down on this guy, and I kind of am. I'm not a dude that just bleed. I love ground fighting, but I love ground fighting when there's something happening. A lot of times there's just not much happening with him, especially at welterweight. He's so short at welterweight, and while he is a strong guy, they Tractor is a very good nickname for him, but tractors aren't fun to watch. They move slow. You
take that back.
I mean, Nardia Prazeres' route to victory here is to take his opponent down and establish top position and win rounds or possibly get a submission. I'm not picking that to happen against Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now, I underestimated Rakhmonov coming into the Alex Oliveira fight. I picked against him. I saw the tape. He looked impressive and actually against some decent opposition, but I've just seen too many undefeated prospects coming from, kind of Russia and the former Soviet republics with undefeated records. And when they get to a North American promotion, they look physically different. Insert your own interpretation there. And the change in level of competition is just too much. And I thought Alex Oliveira is a really, really tough first ask. Shavkat Rakhmonov ran him over. It's not just the guillotine choke, it's that he threw him around. He completely just bullied him in the way that very few people at lightweight or welterweight have ever done to Alex Oliveira. That completely closes off, to me, Michel Prazeres' only route to victory. He's not going to take Shavkat Rakhmonov down and just, hang out in half guard for whole rounds. Rakhmonov, I mean, he's a willing striker. You'll get into more of his striking game, than I will, but, likes long punches. He does like his kicks, but what he really wants to do is take people down and either beat them up or choke them out. Here, I think he might just go ahead and lean on his stand-up game. I think he's just going to ding the hell out of Prazeres on the feet. Prazeres will come charging at him, won't be able to get him down. And Rakhmonov will either hurt him really bad on the feet and then jump on him for the finish, or just clean knock him out on the feet. But give me Shavkat Rakhmonov by second round TKO. And, kind of a chicken one to lay this on, but this is my lock of the night. I don't see Prazeres winning this one.
Wow. I'm still shuffling, trying to find my bet of the night. So I'll start with Prazeres. So we haven't seen him for 2 years because of USADA violation. Real shocking that guy was taking. Oh, I shouldn't say was taking, but I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But this is one of those ones. Not too surprised that he popped hot. I mean, he just look at him. But let's talk about his style of fight. So on the feet, he's got tight boxing. He has that classic Chad Mendes. I think Sean Shark was a good impression. He boxes similar to Sean Shark, tight. He presses forward, though he doesn't press forward with his punches. Like he'll throw a single strike, but I think he kind of intimidates people when they back up to the cage for him. He tends to load up on everything. He was hurt by Nordiev in his last match. 2 years older. I don't expect his chin to get better. But he's insanely strong in the clinch, even at welterweight. He's got. So you talked about Cowboy Oliveira, like his wrestling gets thrown around. The different styles of wrestling, though. Like Oliveira is more of a clinch guy, chest on chest. While Prazeres can do that, he also has a lot of entries, and he's relentless in his takedowns. He's very good at chaining takedowns together. He's got good top control. He is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, 11 submission wins. He really likes to attack the head, guillotine choke. Like he guillotine choke for Vatos Pravinsky. He likes Darce's, like those. He likes those tight, where he's got short arms kind of thing. I rewatched the Nardiev fight because he was a big favorite in that fight, and then Nardiev beat him. And I remember thinking like, oh wow, Nardiev smoked him. And then I rewatched it and I was like, wow, actually, it was pretty close until the closing minutes, and that's when Nardiev kind of pulled away, which made me go like, wow, I feel better about Prazeres than I remember. Now move over, and now he's 39, so that doesn't make me feel better. But move over to Rakhmonov. You mentioned M1 global champion. He just turned 26 years old, so you gotta like that. Like he's so young. He's well-rounded. He's very composed on the feet. Doesn't really tense up. Works behind a jab. Really nice snapping punches. Will attack with combinations. He goes to the body, which would be a big thing against a guy moving forward like Prazeres. Defensively, he makes some mistakes by pulling his head straight back. Wrestling wise, he likes to clinch takedowns. He looks for upper body clinch takedowns. We saw him, like you mentioned, throwing out Alex Oliveira. If he's on top, good top control, full submission wins. Really haven't seen too much of his takedown defense. He hasn't fought a power wrestler like Prazeres, where it's a guy who's going to be chaining takedowns, turning the corner. If Prazeres is still the fighter we saw last fight 2+ years ago at 39, I don't know. So it's a really intriguing fight. The line says Rakhmonov should murder Prazeres, but Prazeres doesn't get murdered in fights. Even in fights he loses, his style, that John Fitch style you says, is going to give him moments. He's going to frustrate you. He's going to get you pinned against the cage. He's going to get a takedown. Will he be able to hold you down? I don't know. But, man, this is you're locking this in. I don't feel that way about Michel Prazeres fights at all. Like, he's one of those guys, I forgot about him, and then I started watching him. I'm like, wait a minute. Not only did I forget him, but he was a thing. Like, he had a nice run for a while. He was starting to, I don't know if he was ranked, but he was putting together some wins, and he beat Gilbert Burns. That was the low point of Gilbert Burns, not the rising, but still a nice win on your resume to tell your grandchildren one day. I haven't seen enough from Rakhmonov where his striking looks fantastic. Absolutely. Looks fantastic. I understand why everybody's on this guy. It looks, but I haven't seen enough of his defensive wrestling to be extremely confident to lock him in as lock of the night. And this is going to be my fourth one, man. I'm taking Prazeres, man. Until someone can show me they stop a takedown, I know maybe it's the wrestler in me, but I'm taking the plus, I don't know what is it, 280 or whatever he is. And this is not even my biggest upset. I picked a big one, but I'm doing it again. This is my fourth upset pick of the night. I'm going to take Prazeres to get some takedowns. I think it's going to be extremely close. Might have a split decision. Prazeres, sprawled out underneath Rakhmonov at the end of the fight. Michael Bisping saying the wrong guy clearly won. But give me Prazeres split decision win.
Wow. So you and I have differed on the last 5 fights in a row. While we each have, some underdogs, you are getting the big underdogs on your plate. Like, this is going to be a fun event to watch. Unbelievable.
That's my fourth underdog.
That brings us to the top prelim of UFC Fight Night 190. And top is an appropriate way to describe it, as it is, I am pretty sure, a tie for the tallest fight in light heavyweight history in the UFC. It is Kennedy Nzechukwu and Danilo Marques. Nzechukwu, the 29-year-old Nigerian by way of Dallas, is 8-1 overall. He is 2-1 since joining the UFC out of the second season of Dana White's Contender Series, actually his second Contender Series appearance. He lost to Paul Craig by third-round triangle choke in his debut, because that is what Paul Craig does to people, and then defeated Darko Stosic and Carlos Ulberg in his next two appearances. He'll be taking on Marques. The 35-year-old Brazilian is 11-2 overall. He is 2-0 in the UFC, having beaten Kadis Ibragimov and Mike Slow Rodriguez in his first two UFC appearances. Odds are pretty close on this one. Nzechukwu, the slight favorite at -125. You can get Marques at even money or even +105 out there. 6'5" Nzechukwu and 6'6" Marques. I brainstormed this with Sherdog associate editor and all-around stats guy Jay Petrie. The only one we can think of that even ties it is 6'5" Alexander Gustafsson and 6'6" Cyril Diabate. So that's it. I mean, this is taller than Jones versus Gustafsson, that says a lot, because in their first fight, literally all the UFC had to sell it on was that, hey, here's a guy that's taller than John Jones. Like that was the whole selling point of the fight. Yeah. And this one is even taller than that. So,
so what you're telling me is you're promising we're going to have like fight of the year candidate like we had in John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson. What are you telling me?
I actually think it's going to be a hell of a fun fight, but I'm definitely not picking Jones versus Gustafsson 1. I'm going to kick this one to you with a two-time Contender Series graduate for sure. Who have you got in this matchup of the tall striker and the tall grappler?
Yeah, so another intriguing fight. Like we joked about it being Gustafsson and Mr. Jones, but if this is still fight of the night, that would not surprise me at all. As you mentioned, two massive human beings. Kennedy's also not massive, just tall, but he every time I see him, he just like, how is this guy not a heavyweight? Like, and not even when I look at him, I don't go like, how is this guy not a heavyweight? But like, how is he not like a big heavyweight? Like, how is he not like 250?
No, exactly. Yeah, he looks like a 250-pound guy. Totally.
It's like I've told this about, I cover fights, and every time I see Diego Lima, and I'm like, how the hell are you a welterweight? Like, you look like a heavyweight. Like, you're that big of a dude. That's what I feel about this guy. What I like about him is he's a high volume guy. He just marches forward. He's busy jab, but he fights similar to another fighter on the fight where he's a tall guy, but he doesn't really use range. He likes to use his height in the clinch area. He wants to be able to throw knees in there. He wants to be able to grab the back of your neck. And a guy who does that similar is Tim Means. Like, Tim Means is always a taller guy, but never keeps his range. He actually likes that close battles. He's starting to find his power. We saw that in his last fight against Carl Orberg. I mean, he's a guy that he just looks like he should have huge power, but I mean, that kind of shows you that power comes from technique first. But he's starting to get that, and then the rawness of the strength. He has tall man's defense though. He keeps his chin high in the air. He lacks head movement, just pulls it straight back, which is the problem. He also pillars, which I don't. I've said this many times. You're probably sick of me hearing it. I believe pillaring works good in boxing. It's I would even say adequate in MMA. I'd say like below average. It doesn't really. What I mean by, if you know what I'm talking about, it's the Tito Ortiz effect. This is pillaring, where you hide behind your arms. You do a lot of this. In boxing, you have the big boxing gloves. It helps a lot better. You can kind of crunch up. You're not worried about leg kicks. You're not worried about elbows. It's a little different. But that's something he does. I don't like that. But I like his front kick. I love that he throws that. I love his stepping knees. I love that the clinch is a strong point for him. His plum style with his knees and elbows are good. I like that he's sneaking in takedowns. He isn't a wrestler, but he's adding takedowns to his game. Heavy top pressure, good ground and pound. He just kind of has long elbows and hammer fists. He just throws some big. It's hard to, when you have a big guy like that on top of you. He's not a submission threat, though. His takedown defense is bad. He is hard to hold down just because he's just so big and strong. But he has good cardio. Move over to Marques. Marques is unathletic, low output on the feet, very unorthodox herky-jerky style. Hard leg kicks. He really makes no disguise about it that he wants to get the fight to the ground. He uses his long arms and just reaches for a takedown. Doesn't really shoot. He has a very snatch single type style. If you know what I mean, like that's you see a lot of heavyweight wrestling. You kind of like in like heavy wrestling, you like pop a head, step to the side, snatch single. It's very like that. He likes to reach. Michael Chiesa, for someone like he actually has a very snatch game where he doesn't really shoot as much. He more likes to reach with the long arms. John Jones actually does it a lot when he wrestled. He had a lot of snatch game. Guys with long arms, Mike Chiesa, John Jones, Daniel Marques works for these guys. He will pull guard though. I don't know if you want to do that. I don't know if you want to be underneath a guy like Kennedy Nzechukwu. While yes, Nzechukwu is very raw, he still has clubs coming down on you. So I don't know if you want to do that. But he is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt that trains with Damian Maia. I don't know if Damian Maia is his. I don't know if he's in the lineage of Damian Maia, but he trains with him. Regardless if Damian Maia is his guy or not, that's still probably the greatest grappler in MMA history, or at least he's in the club. He had some really slick back takes against Ibrahimov. He has 5 submission wins. He did just slow down Ibrahimov, didn't rush to takedown, very Damian Maia style, where he wasn't rushing the submission, waited for something to develop. And I like that. I like that style. So who wins? This is another extremely hard fight. Pre-tape study, I was taking Kennedy Nzechukwu, and I'm switching. And I'm just going to go with the guy that I think is more seasoned. He's not seasoned on the feet. And Nzechukwu could very likely could just starch him on the feet. Very likely could be on top and just throw down some hard ground and pound and finish it. Like I wouldn't be shocked if we have a knockout from a ground and pound position. But if Marques gets him down, gets on his back, I don't know if Nzechukwu, he's been very composed when he's been on the ground. Like he hasn't panicked. But I don't know if he has a Damian Maia black belt on him and he gets out of it. And someone who can match with his length. I'm going to say Marques catches him. I'm going to say Marques catches him in the second round. This is my 5th offset pick. Give me Danilo Marques. Danilo Marques. I apologize.
That is your 5th upset pick. That will be the 6th fight in a row that we are picking differently. And I am going to hate myself for this one come Saturday night because I can completely see it going that way. And the ultimately the dynamic will be the longer this fight goes, the more nervous I will be. If Nzechukwu wins this, I mean, if I were the type of betting man that would bet on this fight, and hell no, but if I were the type of betting man that was going to bet on this fight, I would take the prop on Nzechukwu by first round knockout. I think that's going to be his time to do this. As you said, he's composed on the feet. He is a better striker in basically every way than Marques. Better reach, especially with his legs. Like he's not in PFL, so I don't know what his leg reach is, but I assume like the inseams of his jeans are like 40 inches. Like, and like you say, while he doesn't use his height well overall in his, in his striking, his use of the front kick does reveal that he recognizes, okay, I can kick somebody before they can get their fist like within 18 inches of my face. So that's one good thing he does. I like that he does that. Lots, plenty of power. And as you pointed out, he's coming into his own with power just as his mechanics get better. But yeah, like if this gets out of the first round, just the longer it goes, the more nervous I get. Neither guy has shown a real gas tank problem. Like both of them have, they have adequate light heavyweight cardio. Neither of them is like a cardio machine, but I kind of expected Marques to have bad cardio just as a Titanic guy who's been off for years and is, in his mid 30s, but it's been perfectly fine, at least for the 2 opponents he's faced so far. So yeah, the later this goes, it's gonna go to the ground sooner or later. And if it's later, I think that favors Marques. I can totally see it going the way that you've laid it out. But I am going to take the other most likely outcome, which is that Kennedy Nzechukwu catches Danilo Marques with something or with several things on the feet in the first round. Maybe Marques, shoots a desperation takedown, manages to get it to the ground, but he's already compromised. Nzechukwu is dropping those like supersized John Jones elbows on him, and this thing's over in the first round. The main card of UFC Vegas 30 starts with a lightweight matchup between Renato Carneiro and Herbert. Renato Carneiro, the man who goes by Moicano, is 32 years old from Brazil. He is 14-4-1 overall. He is 6-4 in the UFC. He fought most recently back in December at UFC 256, getting knocked out by Rafael Fiziev late in the first round. He takes on Herbert, the man from Greater Birmingham, I believe it is 33 years old, 10-2 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC. He joined the UFC out of Cage Warriors, where he had been a standout. Took on Francisco Trinaldo at UFC on ESPN 14 back in July, and got knocked out in the third round of what had been a great back and forth fight. Odds in this one do strongly favor Moicano. He is minus 240. You can get Herbert around plus 200. I'm going to be honest. I'm always honest, but I'm going to be honest in saying I only realized this, I think, very recently. I don't know that Moicano is actually that good. I feel as though, in my mind, as well as, probably some other fans' minds, he's been skating along for quite a while on the goodwill of having beaten Calvin Kattar and Cub Swanson back-to-back. Because when he did that, and the way he did it, made him look like a top 10 guy now and a title contender soon. But once he got to that level, he was just completely overmatched. Jose Aldo, Korean Zombie kind of showed what this looks like. Rafael Fiziev, who, hey, the guy is a super prospect, and specifically he's an outstanding striker. But you can lose to Jose Aldo in Chan Sung Jung and still say, hey, I'm still a top 10, maybe borderline top 5 guy. You can't get blown out by Rafael Fiziev in 4 minutes and still be at that level. So I'm jumping off. I've jumped off the Moicano train here. I think he's just another guy at 145 or 155. I would say that at his age and given what his game runs on, he's probably better off at lightweight right now. At 145, just he looked dehydrated and hatchet-faced. He doesn't especially use his crazy length and reach to any special advantage on the feet, so why bother? Just go be a lightweight. Herbert, I just said that I question whenever a hot prospect comes out of, like Eastern Europe and, Central Asia. Just I've been burned too many times. When somebody comes out of Cage Warriors looking great, I actually usually feel pretty good about him. I felt good about Jai Herbert going into the Trinaldo fight. I still felt good about him afterwards. Yeah, he got knocked out, but Trinaldo hits like a truck, and Herbert absolutely put it on him in the second round. I was like, man, this is a breakout debut, and I mean his face got broke out, but I still felt pretty good about that one. And that's not something that Moicano is going to do to him. Herbert's been knocked out. He's been hurt on the feet. He's been hurt on the ground and put away. But he's a pretty good grappler. I think he's a much better striker than Moicano. He's even bigger than Moicano is. He's a tall guy. Doesn't really, you just talked about it with Kennedy and Nzechukwu, where he's a tall guy, but he doesn't use his height in the traditional tall guy way. He doesn't want to fight from range. Even against shorter fighters, he's the one kind of closing the distance, crashing the pocket. He wants to hit people with volume. He wants to nail them inside with short stuff. He's fine grabbing the clinch. I think this is going to be not a coming out party. I mean, it would have been a coming out party if he had crushed Trinaldo in his debut, but this will be a nice way to get back on track, and it's going to be just the continuation of the slide for Moicano. Give me Jai Herbert by first round knockout. I think he's just going to overwhelm him. This is going to be over quick.
Wow, that's a huge pick. So this one, I actually really agree with what you're saying, Moicano. I don't know if he's just another guy, but I don't know how I feel, I should say. I 100% understand where you're coming from. And to me, this is the fight. He gets knocked out by Jai Herbert. Jai Herbert's good, and Moicano's just another guy. But if he beats Herbert like he beat, say, the guy in the open fight, the Bosnian guy, what's his name?
Hadzovic. Damir Hadzovic.
Yeah. If he beats Damir Hadzovic that style, then you go, wow, we know Herbert's been pretty good. Look what he did against Trinaldo. and Moicano ran through him. Yeah, he had that Jeremy Stevens win. He looked the fight that really jumps out to me is the Cal Makeda one. I think about Brian Ortega. He lost that fight, but he was winning it. There was one or two other fights that was like big wins for him at the time. I think
he beat Zubair Tukhugov when Tukhugov looked like a future top 10 guy.
Yeah, and Jeremy Stevens, Cub Swanson, those are two, good quality veteran guys. So he had good wins, but yeah, when it's bad, it's been really bad and like knocked out early. So yeah, this is the guy that there's a lot of pressure on Renato Moicano. If he wants to be relevant in the division, it's gonna be tough. So I think he's well rounded. I do. I think he has a Moy style striking. I think his boxing is decent. Like I wouldn't say it's great. He tends to have some defensive flaws. One being that he stands directly in front of his opponent. He's just a very stationary target. He's very Muay Thai, like what I said, he's a Muay Thai striker where doesn't really move. But he has some of the best leg kicks in MMA. I mean, he blasted Calvin Kattar with those leg kicks. He's a good wrestler. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's got a great submission game. He's got slick back takes, 7 submission wins. But as you mentioned, I'm really worried about his chin. He was knocked out by Jose Aldo. He was knocked out by a Korean Zombie with like the first punch the Zombie even threw. He was knocked out by Rafael Fiziev. I mean, that's 3 KO losses last 4, so that's definitely extremely disturbing. Jai Herbert, I tend to think of him as a prospect, but he's 33 years old, which seems like kind of be the theme. Like they're different than they should be. Like, wow, this guy's 33, and you want to talk about a guy like I don't know if he pissed off the UFC. But imagine having Francisco Trinaldo in your UFC debut and then getting Renato Moicano as your bounce back from your knockout loss. Like, why do they hate about this guy? Like, those are two really like that's not usually who you get. You usually take on a Damir Hadzovic or he's long and lengthy, as you said. He's pretty light on his feet. Uses lots of movement. I understand what you're saying when he presses forward, but he bounces in and out of range. He doesn't keep range. I agree with that. Like he has a busy jab, so he has the ability to fight from range. He has the tools. He's got some good kicks. He's got some really good snap on his punches. His right hand is very accurate. He's got good power. He has 8 knockouts out of his 10 wins. He dropped Trinaldo in the last fight, which is a big accomplishment. If you get inside, he looks for the slicing elbows. He did take Trinaldo down so he can wrestle a little bit. Slick back take. He had his back. He used his long legs to have a body triangle. He was taken down a couple times by Trinaldo, which is disturbing. And I mean, he's an Englishman, so I don't expect him to be Khabib Nurmagomedov out there. But I am worried about his chin. Remember, he got knocked out in his last fight. I mean, it was a big one. It was a bad knockout. I mean, it was the one that Dan Hardy and Herbert Dean started fighting.
Screaming,
yeah. Yeah, that was the knockout because Trinaldo was standing over him while he was clearly out and not really defending himself. So I love your prediction of an upset here. I see it. The avenue is there. You got a guy with a weak chin with a guy who can crack. The difference is I still like the wrestling of I like the leg kicks. I really love the leg kicks, but I like the wrestling. I like the takedowns of the back control of Moicano. And I haven't seen enough of. I've seen things on the offensive wrestling that I like of Jai Herbert. I haven't seen defensive wrestling. It could very well be there. It kind of seems like my theme to go on the defensive side. I've said to like pick on guys who has hold in defense, kind of go with the other, like don't give him the benefit of the doubt, go against him. If you haven't shown me to take down defense, I'm going to go against you. And I'm going to do it again here. Like Moicano could turn this into a heavy grappling match, and I think he just wins that. And I actually think that's what happens here. So I think Moicano knows the back is against the wall. That's a strength he did when he had 2 losses, when he went right looking for takedowns against Damir Hadzovic. I kind of feel like he's kind of in the same position, go right to his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu dominance. So we're disagreeing again, and this time I'm taking the favorite. I am not nearly as confident as the line. I 100% agree with that. Like this line is way off. Like this should be close to a pick'em. Like I understand, based on rankings and wins and stuff, why Moicano should be the favorite, but not as big. This should be like he should be like a negative 130 to a positive plus 120. Like this should be that close. But yeah, give me Moicano by. I don't think he submits him. I'm gonna say by decision.
There you go. The dissension continues. we head up to the welterweight division for a matchup between two men with a lot in common. It is Tim Means and Nicolas Dalby. Means, the 37-year-old Albuquerque native, is 31-12-1 with one no contest in his lengthy career. He is 13-9. He's 13-9 with one no contest in his UFC career, but that covers two different stints with the promotion as he left and was brought back. He's 11-7 with one no contest on this trip through the octagon. He'll be facing Dalby. The 36-year-old man from Copenhagen is 19-3-1 with two no contests overall. He is 3-2-1 with one no contest in the UFC. And just like Means, he was released, brought back. On this trip through the UFC, he is 2-0 with one no contest. However, I mean, visually, in the interest of accuracy, that recent no contest was him getting run over in half a round by Jesse Ronson, who then went on to test positive for the whole pharmacy. Odds on this one are close. Means -145 as the very slight favorite, Dalby +125 as the underdog. Yeah, I mean, this is two guys who had a mixed success run in the UFC, left, have been open about their struggles with substance abuse during that time, have gotten their lives both personally and professionally in order. I mean, with two stories like this, it's almost a shame that one guy has to lose. One does have to lose, unless we get something really weird. And you're going to tell us who it is. Oh, first, I should say that Means is coming in for Sergey Kondoshko, who is injured. Should mention that.
Yeah, and Means was supposed to just fight on a card 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it's not like he, it's not like they called him off the bar stool. He was in camp, but yeah.
Yeah, but Tim Means, you could call up the bar stool. Like, he's always ready. This guy,
I don't think he goes to the bar anymore. Like, I think that's part of his whole thing. But yeah.
Yeah. Bad example, but yeah. From the couch, you can call Tim Means from the couch. Tim Means, like, I don't know anybody who doesn't like this guy. Like, listen, Tim Means is what he is. Like, he's never going to be ranked in the top 15. He's never going to come close to the Sherdog rankings. But he's just a fun guy that everyone likes. I mean, obviously because of his story, but even more just always ready to fight. And Dalby's the same way. Like, I like Dalby too. I'll show my hand right away. This is my fight of the night pick. I think this is going to be a barn burner. I like both their styles. Means southpaw, not very athletic, makes up for it from just being long, lean, and mean. Pretty technically sound. He's a counter striker. Has a high guard defense. Can be dragged into brawls. Will throw down in the pocket. Lots of kicks. Love kicks up the middle. Also like his low kicks. We talked about the pass and we talked about this guard that he doesn't use his range. He wants a battle in the clinch. That's where he is. And I've learned to accept that with certain guys. Stefan Struve, I never accepted it. But some guys, it makes it work, and I'm okay. I've accepted it with Tim Means. This is where he likes to be. He likes to be a dirty. He is the dirty bird. He's very grinding style.
The difference is Tim Means has a chin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it.
Like, he can fight there. Anyway, sorry.
And he's still, like, Tim Means was 3 inches taller than his opponent, not a foot taller than his opponent. When you're going against Tai Tuivasa and and you're not jabbing and teep kicking. Tim Means, he's a grinder in the clinch, can sneak into takedowns. Okay grappler. I actually think it's a weakness of his. Move out to Dalby, very aggressive. His aggression can leave him open to be countered. He kind of just walks through punches. We've talked about the past of his lack of head movement too. But he is very strong. He hits hard, throws a lot of kicks. He likes that Holly Holmes side karate kick. He will wrestle, though. Decent entries, decent grappler, has 4 submission wins. I wouldn't say he's a special grappler. Like, I wouldn't say it's a strength, but it's a nice complement to his game. So who am I picking? This is another fight that I am on the fence. Like, this is a really tough fight. I would say as weird as it sounds, if it's in close and it's battling, it probably going to favor the taller guy, which is really weird thing to say. But I think I think Nicolas Dalby has more power at this point than Means does. He doesn't have as much wear and tear. He is, I believe, oh no, he's 36. Wow, he's another guy who's older than I expected. I thought he was going to be like 32 or something. He is older than I expected. But I mean, both these guys are up there in age, and neither one of these guys, are 36 and 37, not the division where you gracefully age. But I've seen Timur slow down, and I don't think Dalby has, and I like that Dalby can out grapple him. So this is my 6th upset pick. I think we got to have an absolute war, barn burner. But I think at the end, Nicolas Dalby is going to get his hand raised, and I actually think he might get a late stoppage. So give me Dalby by 3rd round TKO.
Outstanding. All right, I agree with just kind of all the whole dynamic you laid down there. I'd feel better about this fight for Means if it were just, a year or two ago. The thing is, he had a style that was built for longevity. Like, sure, he slowed down at 37, but his game never really ran on speed anyway. And being tough and mean and surprisingly strong in the clinch, those are things that don't go away with age. My question now is, what does his chin look like? Because his game does kind of run on being able to take a shot. For most of his career, he's been able to do so. And yeah, the question is that Nico Price fight, which is just a little over 2 years ago, is that just because Nico Price can crack, or is it because Tim Means to some extent is cracked? The Mike Perry fight made me feel a little better, but just Mike Perry's just a shell of himself right now. Like, no comment as a human being. Like, I hope he takes the lesson from Tim Means and turns things around. But as a fighter, he's basically a waste right now. I feel good about Dalby in this one too. Like, we're going to finally, after crisscrossing back and forth for almost this entire card, come together, and it's going to be on a slight upset pick. I have Dalby in this one as well. I don't have him getting the finish, but like I said, if this fight were 2 years ago, I'd probably have Means winning the second, or the second and third round to win the fight. I don't now. I have Dalby winning them. So Dalby is either going to take all 3 rounds or at least the second and third. Give me Nicolas Dalby by decision. The UFC Vegas 30 main card powers on with a featherweight matchup between Andre Fili and Daniel Pineda. Fili, the 30-year-old, is 21-8 overall. He is 9-7 in the UFC. Fought most recently on the UFC's Halloween Fight Night card, dropping a unanimous decision to Bryce Mitchell. He'll be taking on Pineda. The 35-year-old Houstonian is 27-14 with 2 no contests overall. He is 4-5 in the UFC across 2 different stints with the promotion. I mean, it's almost 10 years from his first UFC fight. It was like in early 2012. At any rate, he fought most recently in December, getting knocked out in the second round of a pretty fun action-packed scrap, but got the worst of it against Cub Swanson. That blunted the momentum of his triumphant UFC return, where he just absolutely destroyed Herbert Burns at UFC 252. Fili, one of the stronger favorites on the card. He is -245 right now, where you can get Pineda at +200 or +205 or so. It's incredible, like, how well traveled and how old school Daniel Pineda is for a 35-year-old man. Check this out. Like I said, he debuted in the UFC in like January of 2012, like almost 10 years ago. He fought at Bellator 6. We're gonna have Bellator 261 this Friday. He fought at Bellator 6. We've got LFA out here as, still probably the premier feeder league to the UFC. All the way back when it was LFC, he fought at LFC 3. Like, Daniel Pineda he's having one of those careers that you don't see that often anymore. Like, you look at the record of a guy like, Eve Edwards, and you're like, holy cow, you fought for all these different promotions all over the place. I can't believe you beat that guy. I can't believe you lost to that guy. Just this incredible record that once guys like Pineda are gone, we're never going to see anything like that again. Like, we're already seeing the direction the sport is headed, where the UFC is just, it's snatching 6-1 guys out of entry-level leagues. Just, the journeyman career is kind of, going the way of the dinosaur. I don't know Bob Perez, the head coach at 4 Ounce Fight Club, personally. Like, I mean, I see him here at local events, but where I know some local coaches pretty well, I've never said more than hello or goodbye to him. But I'm going to assume that he has a blood pressure issue just by the fact that his top 3 guys in the UFC right now are Derek Lewis, Ike Villanueva, and Daniel Pineda. Like, you can already tell what blood pressure problem Derek Lewis would be for like the average coach right there. Pineda is sort of the same way. This is a guy who offensively has almost all the tools. I mean, you don't get 27 wins and a 100% finish rate without just being, without having the offensive tools. And in light of that, like, how does this guy have a journeyman's record? How is he 27-14, And the reason is, I don't feel as though he has much of a game plan most of the time. I think he just takes all his knives and guns and just throws them into his backpack, jumps into the cage, and is like, I'll grab whatever I need. Sometimes it works. When it works brilliantly. When it doesn't work, he loses. And sometimes he loses to guys that, frankly, aren't as good as him or aren't any better than him. Andre Fili, because of that, presents a very interesting opponent to him. I mean, the best ways to beat Daniel Pineda are to be a more composed striker and just, tag him up during his wild rushes, which is a lot of what Cub Swanson did to him, or to be able to out wrestle him, because he is a fantastic submission grappler when it's going to the ground under his, on his terms. Like, if he takes you down and gets top position, or he hurts you and chases you to the floor, he's an absolutely lethal finisher on the ground. But if you take him down and he's just, playing guard or trying to sweep, his grappling goes from venomous to average. Those are not routes to victory that Andre Fili does a whole lot of. I'm sure you'll break down their X's and O's in more detail than me, but I kind of think of Andre Fili, he's kind of the highest level fighter that I feel this comfortable about Daniel Pineda's chances of beating. Give me Daniel Pineda in this one. It sounds like a homer pick, but I would pick Daniel Pineda in this if he were from Maine. Give me Daniel Pineda to exploit Andre Fili's defensive flaws on the feet. He's gonna hurt him. He's gonna be chasing him to the ground. By preference, Pineda would rather take your neck and choke you than finish pounding you out. So that's what I'm picking. Give me Daniel Pineda by 2nd round submission, and that'll be 2 massive upsets in his first 3 fights back in the UFC.
Yeah, gotta love it. So 3 things jump out to me while you were talking. One, I had to check again that he had a 100% finish rate in 27 fights. It's 27 wins, which is one of the wackiest stats. Just one of the most unbelievable stats. Like, I wrote it down on my notes when you said it last time. I love it. I'd rather have him lose than win a decision. Like, I just keep the.
He appears to feel the same way. So
yeah, like, don't let him win a decision. Like, that should be a rule. Like, if you make it the distance with Daniel Pineda, Andre Fili, you automatically win. Like, that's it. Just, you have to survive, because we're not putting a blemish on that finish rate. It's incredible. Second thing, if he was from Maine, I would definitely pick against him, because that's what I do. And 3. I think after you didn't pick your boy, like Villanueva, you felt guilty and you had to take Daniel Pineda. No, I like what you're throwing down. Like, to me, this is an intriguing fight. Like, I don't think Andre Fili should be some massive favorite. I do favor him. I understand why. He's fought, even though Daniel Pineda fought all over the world, Fili's had much higher success. He's been a guy who's been in the top 15, or at least on that border of the top 15, 1 or 2 wins away from, reaching that level. Fili, he's a true switch stancer. Like, he's constantly fighting from both stances, uses lots of feints with his hands and his feet. I'd say fast hands, nice jab. I like that he can fight off his back foot. Like, he's one of the guys that you can pressure him, and he does land. In fact, like, his step back left from the southpaw stance is his best strike. It's very sorry, as my dog is making noise over, I apologize. It's very Conor McGregor-ish, if you know what I mean by the step back. It's the basically the punch that knocked out Jose Aldo. That's one of Andre Fili's best punches. I'm not saying he's the striker of Conor McGregor before people jumped to that. I'm pointing out like one technique that he does. Really fast high kick. He loves that Robert Whittaker dipping to the side high kick, which we spoke to all the past. I'm not going to break it down, but where your whole body goes to one side and you kind of, so it looks like you're dipping for like going to the body or to as I said, I wasn't going to break it down. I'm doing it anyways, or a left hook. And then you throw like a high kick on the other side. He likes doing that. I'd say it's plus power. I wouldn't say he's a big puncher, but I think he's cumulative damage. I think he's got very underrated offensive wrestling. Underrated. I mean, you go back to the Dennis Bermudez fight when he was like winning wrestling exchanges against a good wrestler like Dennis Bermudez. Nice reactionary double, which helps him win rounds. I think he's intelligent that way. Like he's a round winner. Like we talk about Belal Muhammad as a guy who knows how to win rounds. I think Andre Fili's similar. Not the best grappler though. Like he's a good offense rep. He doesn't have the best top pressure. He's not a big submission threat. If you take him down, he does struggle off his back. Sadiq Youssef took him down. Bryce Mitchell took him down, had great success by putting him on his back. Something we've talked about, wrestlers putting a wrestler on his back. That's probably his worst position. Mova Pineda, we talked about it last time, like 35-year-old guy just on this incredible run. What not only is it, you talk about all the divisions and all the promotions he fought in, but being 35 years old in the young man's division, that's what's even more. This isn't a 35-year-old heavyweight. This isn't like Villanueva at light heavyweight. This is the young man's division, and he's looking better and better. I love the story. He's well-rounded. He's a good athlete. He's explosive. He's a bit of a brawler. He likes to throw hard. Obviously by the finish rate. I'd say he's a decent wrestler. He's pretty good at scrambles. We saw that in some of his fights already in the UFC. Solid top control, good ground and pound, good grapple. I mean, he out-grappled Herbert Burns, which is a huge accomplishment in its own right. He's got 18 career submissions, so he can put you up. So I agree. I think this should be a pick'em fight, but I'm going to go with Andre Fili. So we're going to disagree. I'm going to go with Andre Fili just because I've seen his offensive wrestling. I like his offensive wrestling. I think he's intelligent. And then if he goes in deep waters, can he keep up? Can Pineda keep up with the trying to fight off takedowns for Andre Fili? I'm not sure yet. I'd be happy if Pineda wins. Not that I'm rooting against one guy or the other, but I mean I root for the story. It's a great story, but I haven't seen him beat someone on Andre Fili's level yet, so give me on Andre Fili by decision.
Third from the top at the UFC Fight Night 190 main card is a bantamweight matchup between two guys possibly on the fringes of contention in a very tough division to get ranked. It's Raoni Barcelos versus Timur Valiev. Barcelos, the 34-year-old Brazilian, is 16-1 overall. He is a perfect 5-0 in the UFC. He fought most recently in November, taking a unanimous decision over Khalid Taha. Valiev, the 31-year-old Dagestani by way of Albuquerque, is 17-2 with one no contest overall. He is 1-0 with one no contest in the UFC, though. Again, in the interest of historical accuracy, should be pointed out that no contest was him getting absolutely starched in the second round by Trevin Jones in his UFC debut, only to have it overturned a week or two later when Jones tested positive for cannabis. He bounced back from that with a unanimous decision victory over Martin Day just in February at UFC Fight Night Overeem versus Volkov. Odds in this one favor the Brazilian pretty strongly. He is minus 225. You can get Valiev at plus 180 or plus 185 as the underdog. Now, Sherdog associate editor Jay Petrie, whom I've already mentioned earlier on this program, will not stop making fun of us for the recap in which we talked about Barcelos off his last win and just kind of ran up the UFC bantamweight rankings and just talked about which fighters we might favor him to beat, which ones he had a chance to beat. He thinks we're way too high on Barcelos. I don't know if that's true. I know that I am high on Barcelos to beat Timur Valiev. I was really high on Valiev when he entered the UFC. he ripped through World Series of Fighting and PFL, and he just looked like a guy that I can't wait until he gets, to the UFC and I can see him against, UFC bantamweights. The Trevin Jones fight is concerning because, one, Jones was a short notice opponent. Valiev completely put it on him in the first round and just couldn't put him away. Ended up getting knocked out badly in one of the bigger upsets and one of the bigger comebacks of the year. And then against Martin Day, yeah, he won the decision, but that decision was Day's fourth straight loss. Day had, for all intents and purposes, been kept around to give Valiev a bounce back fight. Like he took a decision over a fighter who was by definition not UFC level and whom other borderline UFC level guys had beaten much more decisively. So now I'm left wondering, okay, is Valiev just not as good as he looked in PFL and World Series of Fighting? Or is he that good and he just doesn't take it out of second gear, when he needs to? Whichever of those is the case, that's not a good recipe against Hani Barcelos. Yeah, I was surprised to find Barcelos as big as a favorite as he is here because I'm big on this one, but it looks like, the odds makers are ahead of me here. I'm not going to pick Barcelos to finish him. Barcelos, he does have plenty of knockouts on his record, but I'm thinking that the Jones loss for Valiev was more of an aberration. I just expect Barcelos to win just by winning all 3 rounds. He's willing to turn to his wrestling. He's going to be the better striker. I just don't think I don't see where Valiev wins rounds here, much less like finish Barcelos, who is, taken the best offense that much better fighters than Valiev have had to offer since he's been in the UFC. We just talked about Tractor, who's the short, the one I'm talking about.
Yeah,
and
Michel
I'm like,
Prazeres.
Michel Prazeres, thank you. I kept wanting to say Pereira. No, yeah, Prazeres. How he's 10-3 in the UFC, he's beaten some really good guys. How can we keep forgetting about this guy? I know how we can keep forgetting about Hani Barcelos. It's because he fights about once per year. All he needs to do is win this fight and then turn it around and get back in the cage again soon. And I think we could actually see him kind of make a run. So take that, Jay Petrie. Give me Hani Barcelos by easy decision, and that's my pick.
Well, my pick is that if Hani Barcelos wins, we got to go up the ranking and see who we would beat. We got to play the Hani Barcelos game again. Yeah. So I absolutely hate this fight, and the reason why I hate this fight is I have a man crush on both these guys. These are both my men. I've been backing both these guys hard. As far as the Valiev loss, what's his name? Trevin Johnson. I think it was 100% fluke. I mean, he was putting the hammer on him and got caught. I think that's a 1 in a million shot. So as far as these guys' skills, Barcelos, he's a technical striker. He's a pressure counter striker. Though he pushes forward, sometimes he can be a little gun shy. But his right hand has some real snap. He whips it at guys. Tons of leg kicks. That's his game. Kind of very Edson Barboza type where he responds to your shots with a hard chopping leg kick. Doesn't really check leg kicks because he's heavy on his front foot, so he can kind of turn over his hip. I'd say great takedown defense. He stops some takedowns from Sergio Nurmagomedov. Got some body lock takedowns himself. He got some good BJJ. I mean, he out grappled Nurmagomedov in their fight. Nice top control. He's legit. I don't know what Jay's talking about. I love this guy. Move over to Timur Valiev, another guy I absolutely love. Very athletic, constant pressure, high output, technically sound striker, great head movement, good at just slipping attacks to land power shots. He kind of keeps himself in position, good footwork, constantly changing angles, uses feints well, high variety straight, goes high, low, targets the body, hurt. I mean, we remember with Trevin Jones getting the win, but we forget that it was a 10-7 round, the open round. He hurt him to the body with a shot. A lot of kicks, teep kicks, calf kicks. He can wrestle too. Good entries, good chain wrestling, smothering top control. I I know it's a huge step up going from Martin Day to Honey Basalis. Like that is a huge step up, but I think you're overacting to the Trevor Jones fight. Like I think he's legit, and a lot of those guys that we were doing the game, like I don't remember where we stopped Ronnie Basalis, but I'd probably put Timur Valiev in the same. I think this line is bonkers, absolutely crazy. To me, this should be the closest line. Timur Valiev should not be this big of underdog to anybody in the division. Like a 2-1 underdog. If he was fighting the champion, I wouldn't have him as a 2-1 underdog. Timur Valiev is good. So does Ronnie Basalis. The one thing I don't like is the one time I said that Basalis can be gun shy and he cannot let his hands go sometimes. Sometimes he'll just throw kicks and let his hands go. And the other thing, when he throws leg kicks, Valiev can get in and get some takedowns, but Basalis likes to grapple. Like he's a very good grappler. We should have some really fun exchanges on the feet, really fun exchanges on the ground. This is a really close fight. But I like the variety and value of striking. Like I like that he throws his hands, throws knees, throws kicks. He's got everything going for him. Elbows inside, mixes in takedowns. He doesn't just go, "Oh, I'm winning the stand-up. Let me keep it stand-up." He adds in takedowns. Like he knows how important that is to get his opponents guessing. I think he's so smooth. I know Jay's making fun of us for doing the Basalis game, and then me picking against Basalis would be really funny, especially say we went him going up the line of rankings. Then I picked someone unranked to beat him. To me, this is one of those fights like, why'd you make this fight? Both guys should be taking on those guys on the bottom of 15, taking those guys out, not facing each other. Give me Timur Valiev. This is my 7th upset. This is like my 3rd massive upset, too. Like, I'm picking some plus 200, plus 300, plus 400. I like Timur Valiev. Give me Valiev by split decision and another good fight.
With that, we come to the co-main event of UFC Vegas 30. It is a heavyweight matchup between Tanner Boser and Ovince St. Preux. Boser, the 29-year-old Canadian, is 19-8-1 overall. He's 3-3 since joining the UFC in late 2019. Most recently, he appeared just goodness, it'll be 3 weeks ago by Fight Night, dropping a split decision to Ilir Latifi at UFC Fight Night Rosenstrike versus Sakai. Previous to that, he lost a unanimous decision to Andrei Arlovsky back last November. He'll be taking on St. Preux. The longtime light heavyweight contender is back at heavyweight. He is 25-15 overall. He is 13-10 in the UFC. He's been alternating wins and losses for the last 2 years or so. Most recently, he got knocked out in the second round by Jamal Hill at UFC on ESPN, Hermanson versus Vettori last December. Before that, he knocked out Alonzo Menefield at UFC Fight Night 176 in September. Boser is the slight favorite here. He is minus 165, where you can get OSP at plus 145. I don't get this at all. There are so many things about this fight I don't get. I don't get why it's the co-main event, as you mentioned off air between segments. Frankly, I don't get that OSP is the underdog. I don't get anything about this fight. If I were a betting man, and I am not, except in very rare circumstances, I would not touch Ovince St. Preux fights with a 10-foot pole. I mean, the guy has hung around and been a, contender at light heavyweight for over a decade, in spite of being just one of the most wildly inconsistent guys in the history of the sport at this high level. Like, he's a guy who on any given night could beat just about anybody, and on any given night could just lay an absolute egg. And I'm talking about all the way back to his days in Strikeforce, through, he put it together enough decent wins to get himself a shot in an interim title against John Jones. That's kind of the high water mark of his career from a competitive sense. He's now, is he 37, 38? He's 38 years old. He's the other guy I was talking about, kind of like Yancy Medeiros, where for so long you couldn't draw a bead on his career just because he would get a bad loss. Like, yeah, he got smoked by Nikita Krylov, but you can't place too much faith in that. It's just OSP. I don't know that it's just OSP anymore. Like, he's starting to actually look like he's lost a step. It was just always hard to tell because he was so inconsistent, even at his best. He's never had a real coherent game that came together. Like, his game is a weird mix of haymakers, head kicks, and low percentage submissions, on the ground. I mean, he has more than just the Von Flue choke. Like, he actually is kind of an opportunistic and nasty grappler. Like, his 3 minutes of madness against Tyson Pedro was my round of the year in 2018. Brutal ground and pound. Like, he doesn't get the opportunity to use it that often because if, you're rolling around on the ground, he's looking for a shoulder choke or a Kimura or something. But a brutal ground and pound when he uses it. But there's no glue. There's no mortar in between these bricks. Like, his game has never really come together. It's just he's so physically gifted, and the things he does well, he does so well that he's been a top 10 fighter for a decade until recently. Having said that, I don't understand why Tanner Boser is the favorite. Like, the buzz about Boser after he won 2 in a row against Lins and Pessoa, I understood that because he lost to Cyril Gane, but hey, you know what? Cyril Gane is one fight away from a title shot probably, as we're about to discuss. Other than that, he beat Daniel Spitz, beat Felipe Lins, beat Pessoa, but the whole way he was losing weight. He was just physically looking better. He was, an active, light on his feet guy for a heavyweight, threw lots of low kicks, which not enough heavyweights do. Like, I could understand, like, wow, this guy's part of that youth movement at heavyweight. Maybe we'll see him on the fringes of the top 15 and another fight or two. And then he stopped doing everything that got him to the dance. Against Arlovsky and Latifi, he's just looked flat. And he's, like, just not the same movement, kind of stopped throwing his kicks, just has become this kind of reactive fighter. Like, if you are willing to get in the cage with Oben St. Preux and wait for him to do what he wants, he's still plenty capable of knocking your block off. And, I say, I'm not going to touch this fight with a 10-foot pole, but I'm surprised Boser is the favorite. And I do favor St. Preux to win. I mean, give me the slight upset. Give me Oben St. Preux by second round submission. Maybe it's the old Von Preux choke makes one final appearance before, he just kind of makes his way out of the UFC in whatever weight class he chooses to ride into the sunset.
Yeah, this is an intriguing fight. I think it's a terrible co-main event. I mean, you got guys like the fight we just talked about, Valiev and Barcelos, the guys who, Barcelos is on this huge winning streak. Like, it's like a stop with it. Just it's heavyweight, so it has to be way up there matchup. Like, just stop with it. Like, give us the best fighters. Anyways, get off my soapbox. Back to the fight. St. Preux, obviously, he's a true veteran of the sport. He has shown signs of decline. He's they always talk about him, the NCAA football player, and he's this great athlete, but he's really not in the cage. He's flat-footed, kind of slow. But he's a counter striker. He loves his fade back shot, like his fade back left hand he likes. He throws a lot of kicks, as you mentioned. Decent power. I haven't seen it translate to heavyweight yet. He keeps this, even though he's slowed down, he's inconsistent. He keeps fighting. He keeps putting himself in position to fight getting beaten. Like, he's been rocked so many times and somehow got a takedown and won a fight. I think about like the Osajek fight. Like, Osajek was putting it on him, and then he still found a way to get himself in a position to win. He does really stay composed and has big heart. He's a good grappler. Like, I agree that his striking is really faded and his athleticism really faded, but his grappling's still there. He can sneak in a takedown, and obviously, as you mentioned with the who was it, Alex Caceres, being Von Flue choked. Not Caceres, Karalexis. Being Von Flue choked. That's, you have this Oben St. Preux choke, the Von Preux choke. That's like his specialty. If he gets you down, he can submit you. Move over to Tanner Boser, and we just saw him fight. He's pretty fast for a heavyweight. He's pretty elusive, nice movement, uses a lot of lateral movement, uses feints well, but just kind of pops the jab. He wants to win a fight by just jabbing and moving. He's not a big hitter for a heavyweight, doesn't really have big heavyweight power. I said just jab. He wants to throw leg kicks too, so jab and a leg kick. He's a weak defensive wrestler, and we saw that in his last fight against Ilir Latifi. Struggles to get back to his feet, and he shows no urgency. He said in his pre-fight interview he lost to Andre Arlovsky because he didn't have any urgency. And then he's in a close fight with Ilir Latifi, gets taken down, and he just stands in closed guard. I shouldn't say stand, lays in closed guard for pretty much 5 minutes. In a close fight where you get to your feet and you let some shot, you're probably gonna win it. And he showed nothing. He showed nothing to get up. That's disturbing. I'm very hesitant to make a pick. Like I'm very hesitant. Like, one, do I trust St. Preux giving up size advantage? Do I trust St. Preux against anybody? He's very head scratching guy. He's very tough. But I've got off that Tanner Boser bandwagon. He's just a play it safe. He's just a guy that's going to want to play it safe. And while St. Preux isn't the offensive wrestler that Il Latifi is, he's a much better submission grappler. He's much more threatening. And I'm with you, man. I think St. Preux gets this to the fight. And I actually think he's going to get a submission too. And I think it's going to be early. So give me second round submission also. And this is my 8th upset pick of the night. 8 out of 12 right now?
So, yep, 8 out of 12. And we will find out in a moment if that train keeps a-rolling. Which brings us to the main event of UFC Fight Night 170. It is a high-stakes heavyweight matchup. Not explicitly a title eliminator, but quite possibly a title eliminator featuring Cyril Gane and Alexander Volkov. Gane, the 31-year-old Frenchman, is a perfect 8-0 in his mixed martial arts career. He is a perfect 4-0 since, my apologies, he is a perfect 5-0 since joining the UFC just in 2019. Fought most recently in February, taking a very clear unanimous decision over Jairzinho Rosenstrike in a fight that was not terribly exciting to watch, but gave him a leg up in his first win over an absolute, top 10 fighter. Prior to that, he knocked out Junior Dos Santos, took a lopsided decision over Tanner Boser, submitted Dontel Mays with a heel hook of all things, and in his UFC debut all the way back in August of 2019, choked out Rafael Pessoa with an arm triangle in the first round. He'll be taking on Volkov, the 32-year-old Russian, the former Bellator heavyweight champion, the former M1 heavyweight champion, 33-8, 7-2 in the UFC. Fought most recently in February, giving Alistair Overeem his walking papers from the UFC in the form of a second-round TKO. Before that, he knocked out Walt Harris in the second round at UFC 254 back last October. That got him back on track after his second UFC loss, which was a lopsided unanimous decision to Curtis Blades. Odds on this one, favor Gane. The young stud, minus 170. You can get Volkov at plus 150 as the slight underdog. I'm going to tee this up for you for your pick, but I'm just going to point out Alexander Volkov. He is a former champion in really probably the second and third best heavyweight divisions in the sport. He is basically a perennial top 10 guy in the UFC. His only losses are to Curtis Blades by a lopsided takedown clinic that is exactly what Curtis Blades has done to everybody not named Francis Ngannou, and then to Derek Lewis with 10 seconds left in a fight he was otherwise about to win. And other than that, it's all been pretty easy victories for him against some top 10 guys and even a couple of the greatest heavyweights in the history of the sport. And for that, what does he get? He gets second billing and to be the betting underdog against an 8-0 guy who only started training less than 4 years ago. I'm not saying it's unjustified. I'm just saying it must really sting. Tell me what you think about this fight.
That's funny.
Tell me what you think about this fight. Who wins and how, and tell me what you think about any of that.
Yeah, he's the Russian Rodney Dangerfield of heavyweight division. You think, Volkov, I get why he doesn't get a lot of buzz because he's not flashy. He's just a technically sound striker who is very accurate. We've talked about that in the past. We keep talking about he's this obviously massive, tall. That's his thing that jumps out to him. We've talked about these other guys tall on the card that likes to, crash the pocket, not keep his range. That's not Volkov. He understands range. He keeps his range well. He does all those things to keep his range. He's take down the Greg Hardy fight. I know that's not the fairest comparison, But he systematically just broke down Greg Hardy at range. He uses his jab. He throws straight punches down the pipe. He works the body with teep kicks and step-in knees. He did that to Walt Harris in their fight. If you get inside on him, he doesn't let you stay there. He uses movement really well to get back into range. He's also very disciplined, and we've talked about this in the past. Like we said when we were previewing his fight against Harris and Overeem, he stays loyal to a game plan. He knows what he needs to do to win, and he won't vary from it. He knows you can tell he studies. He'll play it safe. If he's got ahead, like obviously didn't work out the Derek Lewis with Leris, came back and knocked him out. But generally speaking, it works out for him. He doesn't take chances. He's just going to jab. He's going to move. He's going to throw a teep kick. And what I love about it, he doesn't get tired because he just unloads when the opening presents itself. He's just touching the whole time. And that's all he needs. When you're, what is he, 6'9", 6'10", whatever. He's way up there.
He's officially 6'7", but I mean.
Oh, he's 6 foot. Oh, all right.
Well, but see, they list him at 6'7", but you can tell that he really is. It's not like, when they said, Shane Carwin was 6'5", and then he's like 2 inches shorter than Brock Lesnar. Like,
yeah,
Volkov is for real. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're 6'7", like you don't have to land the biggest shot. Like you're coming from a different angle. You're going to land power even if you're not trying. And he's got a solid chin. Other than Derek, like the two, his two losses, the two things that stand out is his chin. But that's Derek Lewis hitting him. Other than Derek Lewis, no one else has been able to hurt him. And then the takedown defense against Curtis Blades in the 5 rounds. Like I know he got taken down by Roy Nelson, and he's got taken down other fights. But Curtis Blades was the only one that did that, and it changed at the end. Like Curtis Blades started gassing, and Volkov started coming on late. I mean, he kind of ran out of time, and it was obviously a great performance by Curtis Blades. But all in all, I think Volkov is really disrespecting him. Then we were to Ciryl Gane. Now Gane, as you mentioned, he's only been in this sport for 4 years. But the reason why he's at this level, like heavyweight is the only division where you can be such a superior athlete. We saw Brock Lesnar, you mentioned him a second ago. Brock Lesnar, rose to heavyweight champion because of his athleticism. And that's the kind of level of athlete Ciryl Gane is. He's a fantastic grappler. A fantastic athlete. That said, he does have a lot of technical skills. When he's very quick, he's very elusive, great footwork, can fight from both stances, but he's got good vision. He's got high output striking. Usually, the Rosenstruck was not the best example. He kind of took what Rosenstruck gave him, but generally speaking, he's got some good output. He's accurate. I love that he uses feints well. He likes to jab. He actually likes to double the jab, which we never see in MMA. Beautiful overhand right. He throws combinations. I like that he changes stances mid-combo to get a different angle. Very few fighters, like the highest level, Anderson Silva and Israel Adesanya, like those guys do that. Not many other. And TJ Dillashaw was another guy who would do something like that. Goes to the body, crushes the body. Got good, just raw power. I like his front kick. He throws front kicks, body kicks, leg kicks, step-in knees, decent takedowns, good ground and pound. He has a submission threat. He's got 8 wins, but 3 of them have come by, way of submission. Almost 50% of his wins are by submission. So as far as prediction goes, I really like both these guys. It's I understand what you're saying about Volkov being disrespected, being the more experienced guy, having beaten the better competition, been in bigger fights. I get that part, but I get the part where many people have been talking up Ciryl Gane, saying that he's the next big thing. He's the next champion. I definitely think of the two of them, he has the higher ceiling. If it's a absolute blowout, I expect it to be Ciryl Gane blowing out Volkov. But here's my issue. I've seen Volkov handle guys, and he can just stand at range, time Gane coming in, and if Gane doesn't have an answer for his range, he doesn't have an answer for the teep kicks, he doesn't have an answer for the jab, I can see Volkov winning a boring, very Alexander Volkov decision. And I haven't seen Ciryl Gane beat someone on Volkov's level. Like, I don't think Jairzinho Rozenstruik is on Alexander Volkov's level. And this is a very, corny cop-out, but until he does, I'm picking against him. Like, this is a step up in competition, and this is my 9th upset pick of the night. We got, 13 fights? I'm taking 9 upsets. I'm taking Volkov to win by decision. Now, I realized I didn't give a best bet I was put one on. I changed it halfway through the fight. So this is my best bet. I give you 9 freaking upsets, guys. Like, there's enough. Like, I'm not gonna say here's my lock. I give you 9 upsets. Just pick one of them, and if that one hits, you'll get your money. So there you go. Those are my picks.
There you go. Fantastic. 9 upset picks. We've disagreed a lot on this card. We've both picked some upsets. You've picked more of them than I have. This is one where we are going to agree, and we're going to agree on the upset. I mean, all of that I kind of fed out there in the intro was my thought process as I was, prepping for this, and really just I was trying to talk myself into, okay, why is Gone, why is Gone a favorite? Like, what do these folks see that I'm not seeing? I think, and for the record, I still think Gone is part of the future of the division, and I still think he's quite possibly a future champ. Like, I'm not written him off in the least, but I think we've gotten kind of the wrong bead on him. Came into the UFC with some, he had already had some fast finishes. He got another fast finish, but he's not Ngannou or Rosenstrike or Carwin, in just that come out like a house on fire and just, knock somebody out ASAP. He's always been a little more poised and composed than that. Like, the Rosenstrike fight, not fun to watch, but he realized that, hey, I can freeze this guy with nothing but a jab and leg kicks. Then why would I not do just that? I would be a sucker not to do that. Like, if he doesn't like it, he can do something about it. Rosenstrike never did. He won the fight. Until the end, I felt like the Dos Santos fight was that way a little bit. Like, Gon's willing to wait. That's him. He's not a Shane Carwin that just runs out and just, like Donkey Kong's people. I think that when he takes on Volkov, the dynamic of the Rosenstrike fight is going to be kind of flipped on him. Like, Volkov will be the one saying, this is what I've got. Like, if you can get past it, great. Otherwise, I'm going to be winning these rounds. Volkov's good at winning rounds. It's not always pretty, but at the end of a Volkov round, who landed more strikes, who felt like he was in control. And being able to win rounds is an underestimated skill. There are great fighters who aren't good at it. Volkov is good at it. I think he's going to do it. I don't know how this fight would look if they run it back, 2 or 3 years from now after each of them, but especially Gone has had a couple more fights. But I think this is Volkov's time. Give me Alexander Volkov by decision. I think he uses his weapons. He uses his jab. He uses his kicks. If his takedown defense comes into play, I think it's going to be good enough. And I just think he wins 3, maybe even 4 rounds and survives and advances. It's not going to have anybody screaming for him to get the next title shot, but it's going to get harder and harder to deny him. Unless you have anything else to add, that's it. 13 fights up, 13 down.
This might be one of the most wild ones we've done.
I think it's the wildest. I have no question.
I mean, I had 9 upsets. You had a lot of. How many upsets did you pick?
Offhand, I probably got 6. Like, I probably got half the card.
6 or 7 out of 13 fights. I mean, you're at a halfway mark. I mean, that's insane. How many fights did we disagree on? Like 8, 9 different.
You know
fights?
What? I've got 5 upsets on the main card. 5 out of 6 main card fights, I'm picking the upset. Like, the only favorite I took was Barcelos.
Yeah, I mean,
I've got at least 7 or 8,
6 or 7.
Well, yeah.
So we got a boatload of upsets, and then we picked a whole bunch different than each other. This is going to be a fun recap.
Yep, going to be a lot of fun.
Especially when we're spending 10 minutes on who Barcelos could be ahead of him in the rankings. Just with Jay Pesci special.
All right. Speaking of recap, that is the conclusion of the Sherdog Radio preview for UFC Fight Night 190, Gone versus Volkov, also known as UFC Vegas 30. For Keith Schillen, I'm Ben Duffy, both of Sherdog.com. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the fights, and make sure to check us out right after the main event, either on the Sherdog front page or directly on the Sherdog YouTube page, as we will be recapping this card live. Taking your questions, comments, taking any input. We've been really excited the last couple weeks to have quite a bit of interaction from the comment section. Keep in mind, this is an early card. It starts at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll probably be on air by like 7 or 7:30 or something. So yeah, you'll get some violence for lunch and some talk for dinner. For Keith Schillen, I'm Ben Duffy. Thank you for listening.